Good morning. This is an experiment, and I'm Ajay Balamurugadas. I have with me Lavanya Mohan. Hi,
Hi.
Lavanya.
Hi.
So, we are trying out an experiment, which is ask questions and get answers. And on what? To start with automation, we have a lot of topics, questions in our mind. Um, but then we'll see how it goes. It is totally exploratory in nature. So let's get started. First question, um, Lavanya, how are you feeling on this about this experiment?
Very different. So yeah, I didn't want to come in with any agenda as such, and I have this mindset that yeah, we need to discuss. I'm hoping uh, to be able to answer a few questions at least, and I'm hoping to learn a lot from you. So I would really like this as a discussion. And yeah, if we have some points which we don't really agree on, that's probably even better because then we can discuss and discuss more and learn more.
Right, right. Good start. So I'll just say this the agenda. We'll fill this later. I'm just trying to put the guide words here. Okay, so the first question is when were you first introduced to test automation?
Um, this was actually I think it was in my college itself in university. We had a so I took I did engineering in information technology, and we had a subject called software testing. Now, even though it was actually very theoretical, our my professor was somebody who had some 11 years experience in the industry and had come to teaching because that's what he liked. So what he used to do is almost not follow the book at all. Right? He would say you can learn whatever is in the book anyway for the exam, but
Hmm.
I'm going to teach you something else. And he would always try to keep a lot of practical sessions, and so we I think we started with like some very random apps online, and he would just say what do you want to do,
What are the?
and
Sorry.
what you will test in those. Right?
Okay.
Just having discussions around that. Like we had started like that, and then he had so let's say it was a simple like form, right? And we would want to probably enter a lot of values and see how it works. So then he would say, okay, what are the different values you would probably think of entering in these fields, and now generate it. And generation was probably the first sort of automation that we did in our practical session, where we would say, okay, well, let's generate some random numbers for this, generate some random strings, random characters, and a whole lot of it so that we could then populate it. We didn't automatically populate those fields back then, but at least we started with generating data automatically with a lot of variations. So I would say that that was probably the first time I was introduced to anything around like automation in testing. Yeah, and then eventually I started writing. So when I joined ThoughtWorks, that was my first company. We also started doing automation with like basically checks for the UI application that we were building. So so that's I think where Selenium and all those other tools sort of pop up. But yeah, my probably first interaction as with writing scripts for whatever testing would have been in college.
Very nice. Good to hear that someone who taught software testing via practical sessions more than a book. Nice.
Yeah,
Should we get his or her name here?
yeah, sure. Jayakishan Khatwani.
And please spell it out.
Khatwani. I think that's what it is.
T.
WAN. I'll find him on LinkedIn anyway, if, just
Sure.
to correct spelling. I think he was probably one of the reasons that I even started liking software testing, right? Because everything was so practical, even in college. I think it was just it just seemed like fun. It was not, very like how some people say it could be boring or it's just easy. It didn't feel like that back in college, and then I think it just continued like that. It doesn't feel like that now either.
Very nice. Good. So next, right. So now, if
Not
you,
allowed to ask you the same question.
oh, you can. So then I will just put in one more section called, right,
Okay.
and then yeah, this would be one, right. So yes. So when did I first get into test automation? Is I think in my first year of testing itself, we had a desktop application. It was 2000s late, I mean 2006. So I was testing a desktop application, and we had to run the regression suite again and again every 2 3 months. It's like the release was once in 6 months at that time, so it was like peaceful once in 6 months. But then during the release, that 1 month would be stressful because you would keep getting builds every 2 or 3 days. At that time, that was like, oh, we are under pressure. We are getting builds every 2 3 days and all that. Yeah, but then there are a lot of test cases and a lot of functionality also associated with the actual printer, the hardware, right? So we had to automate the test cases on the desktop UI, and we were using Auto IT,
Okay.
right?
I've not
And
yet.
you have heard? Not?
No.
No. Okay, Auto IT. Even now, people use it for any desktop uh, actions,
Okay.
especially if there is a web application or any the most popular tools. If they cannot do something, I think they use in some places Auto IT.
Okay.
Right. So we had to automate this, and I tried a lot to learn programming languages, but then I never had a great teacher like you. I had, I mean, I went to one of these institutes where the lecturer was going through the book, and every example was about that institute, which kind of blocked me. Like, यार कुछ और भी हो सकता है, like,
Hmm.
right? And thereby, if my basic questions are not cleared, then I lose out. I'm out of the attention mode for the rest of the concept. So I was not interested in programming, and I was of the idea that automation cannot find bugs, which, by the way, is still true as of date. It is just that we can do a lot of great things with automation, but then, 6 months into the industry, someone who has found a lot of bugs with the feeling that, your automation cannot find this bug. So I was averse to programming or automation. But then I still tried because that was one of the items in the goals for the year, right? Uh, I used to rate myself 2 out of 5, saying, "Look, I'm not done great. I know it." But still, Auto IT was the first time I got expo. I mean, I used Auto IT to automate stuff, and it was mouse coordinate click. Um, so, and where people were writing functions, I was writing, I first I don't know about functions and I don't care about functions. I'll not use your functions. I'll write my code for my test case. Uh, Long, lengthy breaks at the movement of a mouse. So, there were funny instances like I had tied the whole cube with threads, like no one should even by mistake move the mouse and all crazy stuff like that. So desktop application automation was the first time when I experienced test automation, and it was not a great success. Also, every 6 months they had to change the suite because the UI changed, and I was like, "Look, what have you done? You said you're you will automate everything, and you have been telling it for like 2 years now. Right? So
Mm.
I think that was one thing that got fed into me, saying automation is, which is difficult to maintain, but I understood it as automation is not possible at all. Right?
Mm.
The immature me. Yeah. Mm, good. So this is on desktop, auto IT, and constant changes. Right. So yeah, this is good. So I mean, you can start with the question now and then answer the same question.
Okay. So actually, since you were talking about UI and constant changes, uh, like, did you consider that okay, maybe UI changes, but then maybe like lower level tests could still be there. So maybe unit level or integration. Did you like try to get into those kind of things, or like just speak to people and
Uh, okay, good point. Never thought about it. Was not even aware of it. Because the reading, the blogs, all of it was never on the lines of automation at all. Because the mindset was automation will not catch this bug, so don't pay attention to automation. And that is when I think Selenium was like coming up. People were talking about Selenium, and I was like, it's okay. Automation will not find bugs. Let me focus on sharpening my testing skills to find better bugs, more bugs, quicker bugs. I mean bugs quickly. So yeah, never. But then now, if I go back to that situation, maybe I would have asked, like, okay, is there a better way to do this? Because whatever the team was doing, they claimed that we have automated these many cases, 50 cases per week, whatever. The end result, we could not use that, and that was a strong point in my favor even now. And like, yeah, you were so good in automation. I was not. I accept. But then, if you are so good, you should have used it. Are you using it? No. Then something is wrong, right? So, your point about lower level, yes, unaware at that time. Maybe now you can. I mean, if given a chance again, that would be the first question. Yeah.
and sorry, so one more follow up to that. So like if today you were to like do automation at any level, doesn't matter. Would you would you still say? I mean, I understand what you're saying. It can't find bugs, like it can't find anything new. But do you expect it to find something? Uh, like just give you any information, and what kind of information would you expect?
Okay. As on date, I mean, from last, I would say 3 4 years, my total perspective on automation has changed. I mean, I'm willing to learn about automation. Uh, yeah, it doesn't make a difference to the industry as such, but then I understand the power of automation if used rightly. Right? If used right, I know what it can do, and I'm working with teams where we are doing automation, and I can see the power, and I can see the places it fails as well. So I'm rich with that experience now compared to my initial uh, mindset of automation cannot find bugs. Now I'm like, of course, automation cannot find bugs, but that is not the power of automation. Automation can be used to do some other things, where if a human had to do it, he or she will either take a lot of time or might make mistakes. Automation will not make those mistakes, right? Power of scale. Use automation, right? Repeated checks. Use automation. Overnight runs. Please go ahead and use automation. Checks at the places where the code even gets checked in, right? So check there itself using automation, right? So yes, now my understanding has changed. It is not just restricted to can it find bugs. Of course, if you take a scissor and ask if can it, what can a scissor not do? You take a scissor and say, can you use it to hold a utensil? Of course not. But that is not the purpose of a scissor. But right, a scissor can do a lot of things to help in other places. Right. So yeah, the reason I got the scissor example is, yeah, I saw food nearby. So
Oh, okay.
as on date, understanding has changed, and a lot of power of automation realized. Okay, so this is okay. Okay, so my turn. Question for you. When was it when you felt super proud of what you did in terms of automation? And when was it when you felt, why did I even do this?
I have felt, why did I even do this many times? Maybe I can start with that.
Okay.
Then I'll think about when I felt good about it. I think one of the first things that come to mind is so this was in my first project, and we were using we were using Selenium for Selenium with Java. No, I think with Ruby. Sorry. So with to to just check some things from the UI, right? And so initially we started off with just writing basic scenarios and like all those driver methods, which would do like find element and click and all of that, right? But that part, now like finding, clicking, everything, that seemed to be like present in all these different classes, right? All these different page there. So what I thought was, why not create another level of abstraction, which would basically a wrapper over the existing methods, and just start using that. And at that point, initially, I thought it was a very good idea, right? But what I eventually learned, so then, and since we were using Ruby, it was easy to extract things out, create a Ruby gem, publish it, and then just start using that, right? Also, we started like that. But what I eventually realized was this wrapper was another, like just any other library that we had to now learn, right? So now we had to learn, oh, Selenium can do click, and then learn what this driver actually. So it's not the same click method, right? It's probably another. It might be called click, but then the syntax would be slightly different. So now we have to basically learn two things: that oh, Selenium can do this, and then how are we doing in this library? And it felt very unnecessary because it was essentially just exact same thing, just wrapped. Right? There are, of course, there are places where wrappers do help, but in something like this, it just was. I think it was just too
Overkill
chaotic.
kind of.
Hmm? Yeah, it was overkill. Definitely an overkill.
So like, if Selenium could do it, you said instead of using it, you wrote your own, what do you call it, method?
Yeah. So internally, it would still call Selenium methods, but it wouldn't be like driver dot click every time. It would just be click on the object. You think of it like that. So instead of a longer line, it would be shorter line. In some cases, it might make sense. Right? Like if we would want to, let's say, do like wait for an element and then click something like that. So those conditions for that creating a wrapper is probably still good because everywhere you would have either like kind of have the similar method, like similar implementation in all the different places that we want to click or something. So maybe that kind of an abstraction is still alright. But we just ended up doing for every single API that Selenium exposed. It was like writing another like one to one mapping of each and every method that Selenium provides, which was just too much. Then finally, we just in the end got rid of it because we realized it was not a great thing to do. But yeah, this was like one thing that comes to mind. And the thing is, so this was like since it was part of uh, my project, right? I was still experimenting, and then it was probably pretty nice. Like, hey, you can create a Ruby gem and publish and all that, right? So I just kind of went overboard and did too much. Um,
Understood.
yeah, I think the teams in general that I worked with were pretty nice. So initially, we all like sort of discussed and thought it was a good idea. Then all realized it was not. Then we worked together to get to remove all that as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was a good learn. And okay, what do I think was nice and that I've done? Mm. I feel like so in terms of automation, what I really like was that I've done is actually maybe not related to checking at all. It's just other utilities or tools that I've probably built to help to assist testing. One example that comes, which I was recently talking to Brijesh, so I think that's why that example is sort of with um, so we had a case where we had to change like in the devices that we were using for testing, we had to switch between Wi-Fi SSIDs multiple times, and that was like the main reason was our different SSIDs were actually like in our staging environment was configured to say that they are different regions. So every time we wanted to check something in a specific region, we would have to switch it. And like there were couple of things that were like maybe specific to a particular region itself, which we even wanted to maybe check in our automation test loop. So then we had to basically have the ability to do that programmatically.
Hmm.
At that point, I think so. The simple ADB commands which were present were only allowed for routed phones for switching Wi-Fi, right? So what that meant is we had to write a small app. So this was for Android. So we wrote a small APK which would internally call Android's setting manager related libraries and then do the switch. So it was a small app which would just do that, and how we could use it was just again through ADB commands, but then for calling this app this new app's activities, and we could just say okay, connect to this Wi-Fi or connect to this Wi-Fi with this password or turn off Wi-Fi, turn on Wi-Fi, things like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I like that because one is it was also like going beyond what people think testers do, right? People don't imagine testers to write an app, maybe, right? I mean, I don't really think that's true. I think we can if we really want to, or if we have the time and resources, everything. But but yeah, so that was like one thing, right? And I think there were a couple of people after that who said, "Oh wow, you can write an app." Yeah, okay. I mean, not really that fancy this app at least, but yeah.
So
So
it
I think
gets the work done in a much better way than, I don't know, right?
yeah. So I think so because it broke those boundaries and like made people realize that a tester like I think before that maybe there were some biases that a few of the people had that testers are not technical enough, and for them technical men should be able to code,
Hmm.
which is maybe not the best notion. But yeah, when we did this, I think they were also like there was this entire mindset change as well that yeah, okay, testers can actually do something like this, they'll do this. And I think overall it just helped us even while we were like checking. Okay, let me just use the word manually. We could still use this to switch Wi-Fi easily, or when our scripts ran, the scripts could also make use of it. So I
Hmm.
think I would just maybe, yeah, say this.
Very nice. I mean, I get to understand that, if you have a problem and some of these steps, if done automatically, can help, go ahead and use automation for it. And it is not just on the execution part where many people think automation equal to execution. Uh, there are many other activities in testing which you could use automation for.
Yes, yes. I think that's one like notion that we really need to change because uh, like I feel like it is a very shallow understanding of what automation is, or even a very shallow understanding of what the power of automation is. Right? The only thing that people usually talk about is checking, checking. But for me right now, of course, my all these thoughts are actually sort of developed. Like these ideas are developed after reading a lot of Michael Bolton and James Park's blogs and maybe their videos and all that. So right now, I've really started feeling that automation is just a tool that can assist us. That's all. It can do checks. It can do a lot more, and I feel like having this kind of a mindset just helps a lot because we can then uh, like anytime we see a problem, we can think about what is possible, and it does not have to be checking alone. So Yeah, I think I had this mindset shift maybe just a few years back, but yeah, I think I have personally benefited from this mindset shift.
Very nice. I have an example to share where I helped 2 3 times with the idea of where automation can be used when no one had even done it, even though they were automation teams. Um, so we were testing the, say, adding apps from Play Store. So that particular API was called into the mobile device management admin screen. So we had to add the apps and then push those apps to the devices as a
Mm,
IT admin. Now, internally, you're calling that same API as go to play.google or iOS Apple dot, right? And then
mm,
enter the name of the app. And then once the flyout comes, select the app and then display. To test any feature related to the apps module, you had to have a minimum of like 200 apps. Like, some would be private. There are different settings that you could apply. Like, okay, these apps should be installed on Lavanya's device. These apps should be shared. Could be installed on more than one device. And right, for that you had to, get examples. Lot of apps, and even
mhm,
the app names, if they had special characters, it would break on some devices or all that stuff, right? So
mhm,
now there was automation to test the app screen, but that was doing at the very basic level. Like, okay, is the app title displayed? If we click on push, does it go? Do you see that toast message or not? That's it,
mm,
right?
mm,
But and but then where I helped people use automation was, I said, look, every day we need to add so many apps into
mm,
the system, right? Can we go ahead and create a utility which will then read from Excel sheet? Like once we had to add close to 600 or 700 apps across to to satisfy a lot of conditions or test ideas.
okay.
Long name, short name, R2L names, and then special characters in the names. And it is not just one special character. You never know which special character will break in which scenario. So we were trying out all the different characters, and then same app name being in iOS and Android, right? Tablet only, uh,
Mm,
not for phone. So there are like lot of apps, and we even used to exceed the limit of how many apps could one search in Play Store, and that my friend also found a very good bug, because she was always adding the apps and then she would say now it has stopped, right, around 5 o'clock in the evening. And we used to tease her saying you want to go home and hence you're saying that you're not able to add the apps. Then she was persistent enough. Her name is Millie Saxena. She was persistent enough, and then we found that there was a rate limiting on the API, which was like an awesome thing to find,
mm,
right? So yeah, coming back, those add once we had added once, like manually, we took that Excel sheet as like, we exported all the apps into an Excel sheet and used it as a test data, like the data driven automation, right?
mm,
And said, next time when someone wants to add an app, just go ahead and search for this. So then you will not get the flyout. Even if you get a flyout, click on the first app, add it, which something that used to take a lot of time and was boring and was prone to error was
mm,
now like saying, okay, you need 200 apps, set the counter 1 to 200 or whatever, and then you're ready. If you already have 200 apps, you want 250, just change the counter, right?
mm.
And then I was super happy because now testers did not have to spend the time. Their test data was strong
Correct.
compared to their initial random apps being tested and random bugs being found. uh,
Correct.
and my friend got an award for creating this utility, and I was very happy, saying, "Hey, look." He was happy. I was happy because his utility was reducing a lot of time for me. I could focus on something because there were things like app catalog, like the app store. You had an app catalog in your product itself, and my app catalog was always rich with so many apps and different test data, whereas others will know 5 or 10, right? So I was always like, look, oh, you want 50 apps? 1 second, shit, done. So that loved. I mean, when I saw the end result working, no fancy UI, no super concepts involved. It's like I have a problem. I think automation can help, and that person Vinod was very good at automating all of this. And this was an exception for him as well. It is not just test execution every time. It was like, oh wow, I'm creating utility. Okay, here it is, take it, right? So that way. And yeah, Vinod is working with me still. I mean, in Capitol, we hired him, so it's like, yeah, he's doing great. Yeah, power of automation, test data generation, I would say.
I just want to do one point, right? Like since you spoke about Excel and simplicity, like no fancy UI and all, I just one thing comes to mind. So when we are like, let's say we decide to solve some problem with some kind of automation, and then people maybe we start thinking about what tools to use, and I've also been bitten by this kind of a bias in the past. Like we probably sort of like maybe don't think about simplicity at times. Right? We just probably look at tools which are most popular, which everyone's using, and something like that. And I'll give an example of a bias that I had for a very long time, and it was like it started off because of the people I worked with, right? And everybody had this kind of an opinion, and I didn't question it at all. I just accepted it for what it was. So we would have this thing in mind that hey, Excel, that's for managers. We are coders, right? We will not use Excel. We will use JSON or we will use YAML, but we won't use Excel. And so sometimes if we wanted, I remember we had some small utility that we were building, and the BSPMs, whatever, they also wanted to enter a couple of things. And we said we are not going to do Excel. We will just keep it as YAML. And now they had to, think about, oh, have I done the right indentation? Is it correct? Is it going to work? For them, it was complex. And I feel that like if we had thought about them, then we would have probably said, oh no, they're comfortable with Excel. That probably makes sense. Let's just do it. But we had this mindset that no, we're coding, and this is like mostly going to be used by us, less going to be used by them a little less. So let's just always keep something like this. And the way this thing was like the bias, I realized this bias also is actually pretty funny. It was very recently, maybe just 3 years back. I was talking to a person called Martin Schneider in Singapore here, and he like they were just talking about one of these kind of solutions that where do we get the data from, and then I said, yeah, we could put it in a JSON, and then he said, yeah, or maybe even in Excel if people are using, and I said, no, Excel, I don't like it, and then he just looked at me. And like his look, right, sort of reminded me, oh man, this is just wrong thinking. What am I? Why am I even thinking like that? Right? Maybe for some people it makes sense to use Excel. So yeah, I feel like we should keep biases in check when we decide on tools and like aim for simplicity.
Yeah. So aim for simplicity.
Actually, one more example comes to mind right now. So very recently, I think in the test chat group, somebody, I think his name is Shailesh, I don't remember for sure, but he just collected a list of all the links that were sent on the group, and then just collated it, right? And when people asked him how did he do it, what tools do you use, he said, "Oh, I just opened it in Open Telegram web, and then took it, put it in Excel, and then applied filters, and then sorted it based on YouTube links or GitHub links or whatever other links." And that's again when I realized, oh, this is so simple, right? Like if you think about it, he followed the most simplest solution. Of course, he could have done it with Selenium, but then he would have had to handle scrolling and then picking up, and then have to probably add his own filtering logic to put it in different places. it would have looked fancy, but it would just have been an overkill for this use case. So the approach that he took, I really like that, and it got me thinking again. Right, so we should focus more on simplicity. Of course, you can do the same things in very complex, fancy-looking ways, but simplicity it will save so much time as well.
Yeah. And what's his last name? Martin?
Schneider. I'm not sure of the spelling. Sorry.
Okay. I'll just put it here. Okay. Good. Any idea what's happening here? What is this highlight? Is it? I'm using every click is taking me. I mean, highlighting a section. Yeah.
Oh.
Escape
Yeah.
releases the focus. Once I select, no, I don't know. Sometimes I get that, but that's fine. Okay, good. So yeah, let's kind of summarize before we go to the next questions. So we started with test automation. When was the first time we got introduced to test automation? And then the question around if you get into the same position again, or have you ever thought of lower level, right? And then when I told about my understanding of the power of automation has changed, then before that we had this question of what were you super proud of, and the feeling of why did I even do this, right? So okay, and now I got it. So I don't know how I got it. Escape. I did this. I did this. This. Then put a space and click. That's fine. I'll watch the recording. Yeah. So you talked about your first project, like kind of an overkill with creating wrapper for the same methods, and then you're very happy about the utilities, which led me to my example of where I used the automation to help. Then I talked about Excel, and then you brought in the topic of simplicity, Excel, and the bias, right? Good. So I think I got it. It is a click and a shift.
Oh.
Click and a shift. Click, shift, click. Okay, good. So, one question to wrap up, for the simple reason being time. Otherwise, I'm loving what's happening here in terms of the discussions and learning from each other. So, yeah, the summary question for today's session, what I have is, what are the two things that you would suggest for someone who is starting automation?
Mm, I think okay. So since there are so many different things available, different areas to look at, I feel just pick one and focus on it. Don't get distracted by all the other things because there's always going to be a lot more outside, like outside the area that you want to pick up, maybe start with. So focus. So that's one, and learn the basics. Learn the internals if possible, so that debugging is easier later and things like that. But learn it well enough so that you understand it and you can exactly know when to apply it or when not to apply it later on. So basics I think are important. Yeah, and focus. These are the two things that came to mind. Right?
Okay,
What
good.
would it be for you?
I am. Yeah, don't hate automation so much. I mean, don't hate any concept till you understand the pros and cons. Just because you picked one con and saying, "Oh, this is it," don't go that way, right? And yeah, in one of my in this is one of the mistakes that I've written about, saying, "No, I could have done that. I could have learned." Uh,
Mm.
would I used automation, much earlier than when I started using? Of course, yes. Again, everything is a trade-off. Maybe I would not have paid so much attention to what I paid at that time in terms of my skills towards testing bugs, people, right? Yeah. So people learn. I have also learned. So all good that once someone has realized their mistake, I would say fantastic. I mean, rather than saying I should have learned in Selenium in 2007 when the world was learning. That's fine. At least 2020, I'm doing something with Selenium. Then, right? Saying I'm still off that line. Not regretting basically. Everything happens for good is what I think. So
Mm.
all good. Yeah, for so let me just add the points. Know both pros and cons means know in depth. And for someone starting automation, yeah, um, I agree. Listen to the above 2 points.
Actually, I think focus point, right? I feel like I started feeling picked it up more after your talk. I don't remember which conference it was, but you had mentioned about focus. Like don't just run behind things because everybody's talking about AI, ML, so do that, and then suddenly everybody's talking about something else, do that. You don't jump, finish something to completion. I think you mentioned that in some. I don't remember which talk it was, but somewhere, or maybe it was in the Q&A section after a talk. So I think that really hit home because I a lot of times feel that I myself don't do it, and then it just becomes very overwhelming. That oh man, this is also there, that is also there. Should I work on this? And that happens to me when I'm reading books as well, right? Like I have so many books that I've already bought, and then I read one, and then suddenly somebody else is talking about another book, so I pause this for a bit, take another, and then it feels like everything is just halfway done, right? Nothing is
Right.
like not complete sort of. So that probably similarly applies here as well. Right?
Right, then, yes,
Instead
yes.
of oh yeah, you mentioned it in your mistakes from as well, right? Like jack of all things, master of none, sort of. I think when we keep shifting focus, it does become like that.
Yes. The trade-off is
Yeah.
you'll not experience many contexts or you'll
Correct.
not experience many things. So I think it's you need to have that healthy balance. I am a pro in this, and you know I know something about all of these things because
Right.
I know few people who are like super good at something, but then when you engage them in a discussion with, I mean, again, it depends on what do you want to try. I mean, want to achieve a discussion. 15 minutes of reading can help you, uh,
Mm.
but they are masters in what they do.
Mm.
Right? Again, trade-off, personal interest,
Yeah.
culture, how you, and then the opportunities, all of that. Right? So
Mm.
good. I mean, everyone knows what they need to do in their life. So we can tell a lot of things, just like we have heard a lot of things, but then we continue to do what works for us or what we like, which is actually good because at the end of the day, you can say it was my choice
Right.
and I live or die by it, right? So
Right.
good. Yeah, so the timer is showing 53 minutes. I say it's a fantastic thing for a morning to get all of these thoughts. Okay, here is the question. Now that either we could polish this, get it into a book, which we'll eventually do. As of now, do you want this to be posted on YouTube and see the feedback on?
Yeah, I don't mind. I was initially a little nervous, but I feel comfortable. I mean, this was just a regular conversation, right? Like it felt like talking to anybody else. It didn't feel like we were recording.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm okay.
right? So good. I mean, see, many people might benefit from these examples, right? And if someone wants to make better notes, please do.
Yeah.
It was little tough to both listen and do this, but yeah, please go ahead and do that. And thank you very much. Please share
Thank
your
you.
feedback. This is for the audience. Please share your feedback in the comment section. And if you want any questions to be answered, we'll try our best. You know, Lavanya has the working experience, and I have the experience of when not to or all the failure stuff. So I think this is good, right? And
Yeah,
yeah,
and the good thing about questions would be like in case we don't know, then it's a good area for us to learn as well. So
correct.
yeah,
See,
looking
no one is
forward.
an expert, and we'll be the first ones to accept when we don't know, right? So thank you very much, Lavanya, for
Thank you.
this wonderful discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was nice. It was great fun.
I am stopping the presenting, sharing screen, and let me stop the recording as well. Thank you all. See you in the next session soon.